Hey guys, last lesson last example in lesson 4 here. This is on multiplying radical expressions. It's on page 423. So let's jump in. This is going to be using a lot of what you already know. So this example right here, we've got two terms that are multiplying by each other. So I think the best way to try and explain this is to just show that these two terms really are, this term and this term are both products that are combined to each other. So if I write it out as 3 times the square root of 2 times 2 times the square root of 6, and then think about what we know about multiplication. And what we know is that it's commutative, and you can move anything around as long as they're all multiplying each other. It doesn't matter if I take this and move this, all the way over here, or if I take this and move it over there, or this goes over there. It really, none of that matters. So what's cool about that is because it doesn't matter, is I can move some things. So I'm going to think about this like this. It's 3 times 2. So I'm going to put this and this next to each other right here. And then I'm going to put my radical signs next to each other because I know how to multiply these two together and I know how to multiply my radical signs. So 3 times 2 is 6. And then we should remember that the square root of 2 times the square root of 6 is just square root of 12. So at this point, we are not finished because you have to critically look at your radicand and say, is it simplified all the way? This one is not, because I can rewrite it this way. So it's kind of weird because you're taking this and you're putting it into one thing, and then you're decomposing it again. But that's kind of how it goes sometimes. All right, so we have 6 times the square root of 4. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. So you have 6 times 2 times the square root of 3, which gives you 12 times the square root of 3. All right, let's take a look at another example here. So we've got this right here, and it looks a lot scarier than it really is. Basically, what we have here is we have the distributive property happening. You've got this term here, which we are going to multiply by this whole term and by this whole term. So it's just kind of a matter of how you look at how you combine things. So let's take a look at the first term. So the first term I'm going to do in red. All right, so you're going to have 3 times 2. So I did that. And then I'm going to multiply my radicands times each other. So square root of 5 times square root of 5 gives me square root of 25. And it's plus, and then we'll do the other one. No, we'll do it in green. The other one in green here. So now I'm going to take these, right? Get rid of all this. And I'm going to multiply this by this. So I'll do my 3 times 5. And then I'm going to do my square root of 5 times my square root of 3. All right? So if we start looking at putting everything together, we have 6, because that's what 3 times 2 is. And then the square root of 25 is 5. So you have 6 times 5 over here. And then this gives me 15. And then the square root of 5 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 15. So this simplifies to 30 plus 15 times the square root of 15. At this point, it is important to know that you are finished, because I cannot combine 30 and this 15 times the square root of 15. I could if the 30 had a square root of 15 on it, but again, if you remember what we did 1 or 2 examples earlier, you have to almost think of this as a variable. So you wouldn't add just a constant and then a variable together, right? You know that. So you have to think about it the same way. And that's kind of how I've always thought about it. So at this point, you are finished. This is your simplified answer. And I think that's going to be the hardest thing for you guys, is just knowing that at that point you're finished. All right, write this problem down, pause the video, try it, and then come on back. Okay, thanks for trying that. So let's start by recognizing what we can multiply together. I can multiply my 2 times my 7, and then I can multiply my square root of 6 times my square root of 3. All right, 2 times 7 gives me 14. Square root of 6 times the square root of 3 gives me 18. Look at that square root of 18 and ask yourself, is that simplified? No, it's not, because you can take that square root of 18 and you can rewrite it like this. Square root of 9 times the square root of 2, and the square root of 9 is 3. All right, and then you just finish multiplying. 14 times 3 gives you 42 times the square root of 2. And that is your finished answer. All right, last example. Write this down. Try it once you pause the video, and then when you're done, come on back. Okay, so start by multiplying these two terms together. All right, so the outside term times the first term. So 3 times 4 is 12. And then square root of 2 times the square root of 3 gives me the square root of 6. All right, then next, I'm going to do this times this one. So it's plus, then 3 times 6 is 18. And then the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. All right, let's start simplifying these things if we can. 12 times the square root of 6 is pretty much as simplified as it's going to get. So we're going to leave that how it is. 18 times the square root of 4, however, look at the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So you wind up with 12 times the square root of 6 plus 36. And again, this is like that problem we had a couple before where we know we can't combine this because you got to think about the square root of 6 almost as a variable. All right, and so you wouldn't add 12x and 36. So the same way, you know, and get 48x, because that's not how it works. It does not work that way. So that's why we leave this how it is and recognize that it is completely simplified. So good work. Thanks for sticking in here. This lesson is officially over, and we'll be able to move on to lesson 5 pretty soon. So thanks again for hanging in there.